reason you all came here tonight is not to listen to me talk so much, but we've got Michael Barry and David Cook from the University of Tennessee Extension, and they're located in Davidson County. And I'm going to go ahead and kick it to Jane, who's going to tell you a little bit about them. And I think David and I are going to switching screens right now. But this is kind of the tentative agenda. I've hopefully met my time, and then we're going to let David and Michael kind of give us all kinds of information. And we'll have more of a formal Q&A section at the end. But I think if anyone has questions about like a current slide that he's on or something he's talking about, David, is that okay if people kind of jump in or type in the chat and you okay being interrupted a couple times maybe?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
That's the norm, actually.
Okay.
Interruption is good sometimes.
Yeah,
Okay.
especially if they put in that chat box, that way we can read it. And...
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and introduce.
Perfect.
I'll introduce these two fantastic people tonight.
Oh, hey, Jane.
We have our, gosh, these guys are just a wealth of information. Let me start with Michael, or I can, if that's okay. Michael has over 25 years, or since years with the University of Tennessee Extension. He served as an extension agent, and his program areas have included some great things: the 4-H Youth Development Program, agriculture, community economic development, and he's also served as a county director. Michael is currently with the Extension Agency in Davidson County. His program responsibilities are agriculture, natural resources, and community economic development. For those of you that live nearby, Mike is a native of White House, Tennessee. He was active in 4-H and a member of the FFA as a youth. He has a Bachelor's of Science degree from Middle Tennessee State University and his Master of Science degree from the University of Tennessee in Agriculture Education. David Cook is also with the Davidson County Extension. He is involved in educating homeowners and commercial clients about issues concerning horticulture and agriculture. He provides educational training on pesticide safety and training for pesticide applicators seeking commercial certification and licensing. He also teaches classes for Master Gardener programs in Davidson and surrounding counties. David conducts both commercial and consumer site visits throughout the county to diagnose and resolve those issues with insects, plant diseases, and weeds. He is a frequent guest speaker at numerous garden clubs, horticulture associations, and commercial pesticide workshops. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to David and let him start.
Okay, so I need to open up my PowerPoint on my computer, is that correct?
Yes. And you can hit share screen at the bottom of the Zoom.
And share screen. And is everybody seeing this right now?
Not yet, no.
Not yet.
Do you see that?
No,
Not yet?
no. Ryan, do you want to open it on your end and just share, give him the controls?
Sure. I can do that.
Should I just close my PowerPoint out here?
It's fine. He's got a copy of it, I think. So there we go. And then he's going to give you control so you can click through it.
Oh, there it is. And do I need to hit share screen or anything?
All right, you ought to be able to control it, David.
Well, let's see.
Probably the arrow keys or the space button to advance and go back.
I'm hitting my arrow keys, but I'm not seeing anything moving.
No, it's not responding yet.
You can just tell Ryan, click.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Ryan can just take control.
If you want me to do that, I got it.
All right.
Okay. We'll try to keep on time. I know we want to go to about 6:45. So, okay, let's go ahead and change the next slide. Michael came up with this idea, which is great. A lot of my programs have to feed on other people because I get my energy from a lot of people, and I do from Michael. And so he thought of the do's and don'ts, and I thought, well, that'd be a great idea. Let's tell people what to do. Let's tell people what not to do. So as an extension agent, we're basically teachers. And so I know together, Michael and I have a lot of years of experience. I say there's a lot of miles on this body, a lot of road miles. So let's look at some do's, and then I might add a few little tips along the way. So before you do anything with any plant material, before you plant anything, take a soil test. You don't have to be a soil scientist, and the results come back, and you can call your extension agent and have them interpret those. But you cannot look at the soil and just assume that the level of fertility with regards to nutrients. You definitely can't tell the pH. So I do carry with me in my car a little soil test kit, and I have pH meters and all that. But the reason for it, we're going to look at a chart later on. Soil pH is that dictates what nutrients will be readily available. But most people don't realize that it's the life in the soil. See, soil, I consider soil almost a living organism in itself. So in a lawn situation, you want to be on the heavy side of soil bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
And most people to go, bacteria in the soil, yes, it's very beneficial. Now, if you have woody plants, trees, and shrubs, you don't want a high level of bacteria in the soil. You want a high level of different fungi.
Mm-hmm.
So how could I promote soil health? Feed the soil before you ever feed your plants. And by that, I mean add a compost, which is residue, finished residue from plant tissue, could be animal tissue. Actually, I don't know if you're familiar with the bokashi fermentation method.
Mm-hmm.
It's a method of actually putting material in that you would not readily put in an outdoor compost pile, mainly because of odors and might attract undesirable critters. So what you want to do is always feed the soil. So, but take a soil test first. Now, at the end of this program, I have 2 slides which are reference materials. They're direct links to the Soil Lab, which is part of the Soil Plant and Pest Center in Davidson County at Ellington Ag Center. So Robert Florence, our director, man, is a genius when it comes to soil. He can talk to you and you'll get excited about it. He won't call it dirt anymore either. Take dirt is what you track into your house. Soil grows plants. So always take a soil test. Now, people always ask this question to us: what is the best time actually to overseed or do some initial seeding? And Dr. Tom Samples, someone posed this question to him. He's our turfgrass specialist. And he said, well, the best time is in the fall, and the second best time is in the fall.
Okay.
Now, what if you got so busy, something happened, and you missed your fall seeding dates? Well, you could seed in the spring, but that's going to be a little bit iffy right there. The fall is a better time because the soil is cooling down, and seeds germinate with particular temperature range, soil temperature. It's not air temperature, it's soil temperature. And it also has to be a level of moisture in the soil. So generally our fall soils have enough moisture, and the temperature is dropping. Now, you can just about ignore the air temperature because that'll scare the daylights out of you. Think it's just way too hot. But the soils, they're cooling down because the nighttime temperatures are cooling down. So what if you miss that opportunity for the fall seeding? Well, everybody probably knows what the yellow blooming forsythia shrub is. And so it blooms in the spring when soil temperatures actually are pretty ideal for a cool season fescue seeds to grow. So, but if you wait too late and those blooms are falling off the forsythia, fescue seed can still germinate. It can germinate in warm soil conditions, but those little seedlings have to develop a substantial root system that are going to be able to survive a really hot and droughty summer. And boy, I tell you, last 3 years, that is the new norm for our area. Last year, I still get people sending me images of plants that have died, woody plants and trees and shrubs, particularly arborvitae. I actually got one today from the extreme drought conditions last year. And so there was no moisture in the soil whatsoever. The worst thing about a drought and having many days, actually into about 3 weeks or more, above 90-degree temperature, the soil, I will take a soil temperature probe and check the soil temperature about 4 inches down, and it was at 90 degrees also. So little root hairs on plants don't grow, they die in those temperatures. So we could predict, and we did predict last year, that we would see at the beginning of 2010 into the spring and early summer, a lot of woody plants that died because the soil temperature extremes. So if you do miss the fall seeding, observe the forsythia. Okay, let's see what we've got real quick. In late summer, fall, also the time to plant clover seed in my yard. I've been slowly training. Okay, yeah, clovers, you can do that too. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Some more do's. Okay. You do want to apply actually a nitrogen fertilizer in the fall too. Fertilizer should be applied to plants when they're actively growing. There are issues when plants are not actively growing, particularly if you have a cool season fescue lawn. If plants are not actively growing, you stress the plants and can severely injure the plants. So why would you want to do a fall application? Well, it will result in substantial root growth. So and even during the winter time, the grass is, when it gets very cold, you're not going to see any vegetative growth, but you can still get a little bit of root growth. And so the plant gets a jump start on our soon to come hot, droughty summer days. So you have a substantial root system getting started. If you do this in the spring, you're probably gonna, if you don't irrigate, you're gonna lose all those little grass seedlings when it gets droughty and hot. Fescue lawn does not grow. It actually goes into a summer dormant state when the temperature gets in about the mid-80s. It's just too hot. Fescue actually is from Europe. It's not even a native plant here. So fall application will improve the health of the lawn. You'll have actually, believe it or not, less spring mowing. You'll have fewer weeds. Why is that? Because a healthy lawn that grows to a particular height, maybe if you can get it up 3.5, 4 inches, can shade a lot of weed seeds so they don't germinate, and if they do, they don't grow very well. Plants, your lawn can tolerate more heat stress, and with the substantial root system. And when we look into water too, we're going to see how that affects the growth. You'll have to water less too. The goal here is to get a root system developed first. Also it helps with disease issues also. So there's a lot of good things about applying nitrogen fertilizer in the fall. You can do it in the winter months. We get into March. When it gets into April, we are not going to fertilize high nitrogen at all. We'll explain that later when we talk about a disease. Weed control is also a big issue with a lawn. I've been to areas, some gated communities where a single weed pops up, they just get all bent out of shape. I said, your lawn is just too pretty out here. You know, there's no such thing as a perfect lawn. Well, actually, I did see one. It was a lady had artificial turf put in. And I'll tell you, and it fooled me at first. I went there, I said, that lawn is scalp. It is the greenest lawn I have ever seen. I was looking over the fence. She said, that's turf, artificial turf. I said, I'm getting some of that. Never have to water it, never fertilize it, never mow it. And it was a little area where she had games, and she had a very level, very nice, and they could play a lot of lawn games on it. So it was that was a perfect lawn. So back to competition with undesirable plants we call weeds. Applying a pre-emergent, what that will do, it will allow the seeds to germinate. It has to be germination, and then you get a little root called a radical that grows out of the seed. Root hairs develop, and then there's absorption of water and nutrients. And at that moment, if there's been a pre-emergent, and all a pre-emergent does is they affect the growth of the root. You don't get any vegetative growth. That's why they call it a pre-emergent, nothing emerges out of the ground. So it's a lot better doing that than trying to spray post-emergent herbicides, which generally creates issues with herbicide injury on other plants too. People always apply too wrong. And I also find that people mix post-emergent herbicides generally way too strong. They think if you can kill a plant with 1 ounce per gallon, just put in 2 ounces and see what that'll do.
Mm-hmm.
So people do that, and then you will contaminate water systems too, and injure your plants. I've gone to several site visits for homeowners where actually the husband just killed the desirable grass and the weeds, believe it or not, which were more had a stronger will to survive, did survive. So he ended up with a green lawn, but it was full of Bermudagrass and crabgrass. He killed his fescue. I never seen that done before, but you can do that. And that he just overmixed everything. I didn't read the label one time. Okay, next slide. Some more do's. This is really critical. We see people scalping lawn. I mean, I can't believe how people scalp lawns. You can do that to a Bermuda. You can cut a Bermuda grass inch tall if you want to, because it has a prostrate growth habit. But the general principle of not removing more than 1/3 on any plant, and grasses or plants, so it is mowing is pruning. So if you let your grass grow to about 4.5 inches, and if you cut off 1/3, you're going to cut off 1.5 inches to 3 inches. That really benefits the plants. The taller the grass blades, the better the root system will develop. When you scalp a plant like a fescue, you put the grass in a starvation mode for a while. It is not producing any sugars, foods, carbohydrates, and photosynthesis. So all the energy now goes back into the root system, develop substantial roots. Then you'll get vegetative growth. But at that time, the plants are very stressed. So a taller mowing height is critical. Irrigation is necessary if you want to keep fescue green. Grasses are 90% water anyway, very similar to most animals too. What you need is infrequent watering, not watering 2 or 3 times a week. One good deep watering. You won't know how deep the water penetrated the soil down into the roots down of the plants unless you get a shovel after you've irrigated or a good rain, especially after 1 inch of rain, a heavy rain. If the weather ever says you're going to get 1 inch of rain, wait a few hours after it has settled out and dig down and see how deep 1 inch of rain penetrated the soil depth. And you'll be amazed, depending on the soil structure in your area, you will either get deep penetration or shallow, and you may get a lot of runoff and pollution too. So you'll have to take a shovel to see, but you want to see a depth of 4 to 6 inches and 8 inches if you can get that. Don't let leaves stay on the grass even during the fall when they start falling, because they do interfere with photosynthesis. They block out sunlight. Best yet is to mow over the leaves and return all those valuable nutrients back to the soil. I never recommend bagging leaves. I always in favor of mowing over the leaves and returning those nutrients. Okay, let's see if we got any more do's. Now we're going to get some don'ts now. So we already mentioned about don't seed in the spring because the new grass seedlings are going to really struggle with the summer heat and the drought. Don't apply nitrogen in spring, particularly after tax day, about April 15th. Even though nitrogen will promote for a lot of vegetative deep green grass blades and look good, it will also set up the plants for potential summer lawn diseases, real serious lawn diseases. So we back up on nitrogen in April. And again, we already mentioned about scalping your lawn. So let's, next slide. Okay, don't water in the late afternoon, and people do this out of convenience. What will happen, you'll set up the lawn for lawn diseases. A disease can only occur if three things happen at the same moment in time. That you have the right host plant, and you're going to have fungal spores. Fungal spores are everywhere in the air. They're already landing on plants. And you got to have a third factor. You got to have moisture for an extended period of time. So two really common diseases we see in this area. One is dollar spot. Now, dollar spot does not affect fescue. Fescue seems to be resistant to this fungal disease, but it will attack Bermudagrass or warm season grasses and zoysia. But it needs a leaf wetness period of around 10 to 12 hours. So if you water your lawn in the late afternoon, even if you see a commercial irrigation going on at night sometimes, you see it going on when it's raining. So late afternoon, you're going to set up what we call the disease triangle effect. Brown patch needs just a little over 8 hours to set up. Now, once you get these diseases, they are difficult to control. The only good thing about dollar spot and brown patch will affect also fescue, but also Bermudagrass, is that these diseases actually don't kill the grass. They kill the leaf blades, but they don't kill the crown and the roots. But your grass can look very unsightly. And once you have that disease will overwinter every year, it will come back next year too. Then you will have to start applying a fungicide as a preventative measure. Don't mow the lawn when it's wet. What a mower does is kind of create a vacuum effect, and it lifts the grass blades up so you can get a clean cut. Also, you accumulate a lot of wet grass on a mower. And what it will do is start rust, start taking over. So those are some don'ts. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is really critical. The biggest factor that comes into play with a healthy lawn, especially all grasses are full sun plants. You got to remember that, is that estimated 25% or more, and look, managed lawns experience shade stress. So if you don't have at least a minimum of 6 hours of sunlight, you can get a lawn. And some of these lawns that have a lot of trees, what they do is they've come in and what we call raise the crown of the tree. They take out the lower limbs, branches, and just to get a minimum 6 hours. So if you can get 6 hours of sunlight, you're not going to be able to grow a really good tall fescue. You're probably going to do a shade variety that is not heat and drought tolerant and cannot even take a lot of foot traffic. So you can have a pretty lawn, but you shouldn't walk on it then, play on it. Okay, next slide.
David, we had another question about planting clover.
Oh yeah.
Instead of grass. Someone, Heidi said that she does that. She's turning her lawn into weeds and clover over the years, and she's not sowing grass. I wanted to know if fall was the best time for that.
Yeah, clovers generally, they're legumes, and the reason they do so well is that they make their own nitrogen because of nitrogen fixation bacteria on them. A good indication of clover growing in a lawn actually is low nitrogen fertility in the soil. That's why clover can take over a lawn. I'll let the white clover grow in my lawn. Generally, you can plant clovers in the fall too. You can get varieties of white clover. And the reason I like white clover and some of the food sources for beneficial insects and bees early in the year. As it gets hot, clovers will play out, but they are perennial plants, a lot of them, and so they can support the native bee population too.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, Now look at this picture right here. This, you see what we call a transition zone. I'm gonna read this real quick. It's selecting turfgrass in a transition zone means choosing species, and you gotta listen to this, choosing species that may be best adapted, but not necessarily well adapted for that particular area. And that's, we're smack dab in the middle of the transition zone, which means only certain months of the year will certain grasses grow well. Grasses don't grow well every month of the year in a transition zone. So we are geographically challenged. So that's why grasses, a nice lawn, they're high maintenance. Okay, next slide. Okay, real quick on these. The cool season grasses like bluegrass, which really doesn't grow well here. If we get up in Kentucky a little bit higher up, bluegrass will tolerate very cold weather. Fescue, ryegrasses are generally used here in a grass mix. Ryegrass will germinate quicker than fescue and help establish a fescue lawn. But look at the grow best from 60, 75 degrees. That only occurs during early spring, and then it starts getting hot here. So if you move on to a warm season grass, they jump up around 20 degrees hotter. And so Bermuda zoysia grass, they're going to temperatures where the other cool season grasses are going dormant. And if the cool season grasses are not irrigated, they will die. So it's a big difference there. Now, if someone wants to, I call it, say, buy your lawn, have it delivered, that would be sod. And it could be cooler. You can install that any time of the year so long as the ground is not frozen. So that's your choices there. But believe it or not, we actually have more cool season months than warm season months in Middle Tennessee. It doesn't appear that way when we get into summer. Everybody can't wait after about 3 weeks of summer for fall to get here. Next slide. Okay, selecting fescue real quick. Tall fescue, and remember that these fescues are brought over here from Europe as a forage grass, colonists to feed livestock. And fescues have been developed. There's hundreds and hundreds of varieties, and they're getting better and better, drought tolerant, heat tolerant. But the tall fescues are wider blade, take a lot of foot traffic. They do need irrigation during the summer months to get them through there. The fine fescues are the ones that will tolerate shade, but they are not heat and drought tolerant and can take a lot of foot traffic. So you can have a fescue lawn in a shaded area, but you do need to try to get a minimum of 6 hours of direct or indirect sunlight. And with a fine fescue shade tolerant lawn, you're going to be overseeding every year. Next slide. Okay, soil prep. We already mentioned taking a soil test. Now, it's best to take a soil test not the week before you're going to put down or prep the yard for overseeding. It's about a month and a half to 2 months for even a planting date. And the reason for that, it takes a while to amend the soil. When you get your soil test result and it says, oh, your pH is way off out of range of what turf grasses grow best in, you can't correct that in a month, sometimes 2 months. It may take 3 months. It may take 6 months. You need to take a soil test. And if you have an established lawn, it still applies to that too. Take a soil test way before you even plant. And most times we don't think about that. So that sneaks up on everybody. Okay, next slide. Okay, here's the 2 red bars show you that grasses prefer actually about a 6 to 6.5. And the width of those bars indicates the availability of each nutrient in the soil. So see, if you get down below 6, those bars start narrowing down. And some of the most necessary nutrients that plants need to grow well. If you get up to an alkaline soil, same thing happens. Certain nutrients are not really available. So that's why a soil test is critical. You're going to get that ideal. Main thing you want to know is that pH range. Okay, next slide. Okay, cool season grasses. This is just as a comparative side. August, September, October. And even though these months can be warm, this is when the ground is starting to cool down. This is the best time to overseed with cool season grass. Now, old homes, they know the builders, they have never had a class in botany or turfgrass or anything. So you can build a house any time of the year, right? And a lot of them are sold smack dab during the summer months when it's way too hot. So you see them, they go out and they put grass seed down, and no one ever goes back to water it. And so what happens, the weeds creep in. So cool season grass is August, September, October. And look at the totally different type months for warm season grass. You got to wait till the soil warms up to a nice temperature around 70 degrees. So we've got May, June, and July. Totally different seeding dates. So once you choose type grass, cool or warm season, makes a big difference. Okay, next slide. Okay, so how much would I put down if I want to overseed or get started? Generally, you want to measure your lawn and figure out what 1,000 square feet is. And you may not have I have a big lawn, it's an acre, and it's almost a perfect square. So mine is pretty easy, but when I measure my lawn, I got to take away the area of the house, the driveway, the sidewalk, other areas where I have plant beds where grass is not going to grow. So try to measure, and that's where a big old long tape measure comes in handy. You may have to do a little bit of figuring here, because you divide your lawn into geometric shapes, and so you go, well, that's a triangle, and go, well, let me think, what's the area of a triangle? What's yours is finding a circle area. So you go, oh no, it involves math. So figure out how many 1,000 square foot areas you have, because on the average, about 6 pounds of a fescue seed works very well. You see, it's totally different for Bermudagrass too. Okay, next slide. So if you're going to seed a Bermudagrass, and a lot of people, some people in Tennessee or in Middle Tennessee, because it is warming, our climate is warming, are moving over to hybrid Bermudagrasses, which are really drought tolerant. Now, they won't green up till around May, so a lot of people, to green up a brown-looking dead Bermudagrass lawn during the fall and winter time will overseed with an annual ryegrass, and you'll get a nice, pretty green lawn, which the ryegrass will die out by the time the Bermudagrass comes in. But 2 to 3 pounds of seed, and that's because Bermudagrass seed is really, really tiny, really tiny. So it's going to grow best again when the temperatures are 20 degrees hotter than what fescue could grow in. Okay, next slide. I'm going to buzz through these real quick. So if you want to secure the seeds on bare soil, or you have to renovate and kill a lot of the existing weeds out, if you have 50% of your, what you call a lawn is weeds, you need to start over just about. And so here again, we look at the 1,000 square foot, about one hay bale, straw bale will cover around 1,000 square feet. So look at the next slide and you'll see how should the ground be covered. This is kind of like the Goldilocks scenario, I call it. No, it's not enough there. You don't want enough sunlight to get in there to promote weed seed germination. A lot of weed seeds need sunlight to germinate. So you don't want to put too much and block out sunlight, so your fescue can't even germinate. So there's a middle area, which is you should be able to see some soil areas popping through. But most people will, when I see landscaping on a new lawn that's from a new house, they smother the grass. They put down way too much. But I guess they charge you by the bale, so they're going to make more money. Same thing with mulch, people. You just need a little mulch, you get a truckload. Okay, next slide here. If you have a slope is extremely difficult to oversee, because once you have a period of rain, all the seed goes down into the bottom. Even if you have a slight pitch on your lawn, water moves down readily on a slope, and it moves really quick on a deluge. Picture on the lower right is actually, they are pumping out, and I've seen this demonstrated. This piece is a little bit of paper in there with a fertilizer, and the seed attaches it on there. They just spray it all out, and that helps to adhere the seed to the soil on a really steep bank. And you can get what we call these biodegradable control blankets too. So if you ever have an issue where you got to try to overseed or want a lawn on a steep bank, this is the way to go. Years ago, homeowners had really had a hard time finding these, but big box stores sell these what we call erosion control blankets now, and they help secure the seed on a steep bank. Okay, next slide. I think we only have 60 more slides to go. We'll get, no, it's not that many. Watering the lawn is very critical. If you're getting, you're starting a new lawn, you have no root depth whatsoever. So you only need about 1/8 or 1/4 inch per 1,000 square feet. And you go, well, how in the heck am I going to measure that? Well, here's the scientific approach. Buy a can of tuna, make some nice tuna salad, whatever sandwiches, wash it out, and when you irrigate, put that out there and put some markings on it. See how long it takes to get about 1/4 inch of water in that, and cut it off. Because if you water too deep, you have no root zone, you're just wasting water. And if you use the starter fertilizer is going to be high in what? Phosphorus. Now, phosphorus will, if it gets into waterways and ponds, will help start what we call a big algae bloom. And then if that happens on a pond and you have fish and you get a lot of algae that generally dies at the end of the season, you can get a lot of severe oxygen depletion, have a big major fish kill. So don't water more than is necessary. And as the grass grows, once we get up to about 2 inches in height, it needs about 1 inch of water. And you do want to push that water a little bit below that short root zone, because you want the roots to seek out the water. So you want to push those roots, make the roots work for you. So the amount of water varies depending on the life cycle of the grass. Okay. Next slide should be fertilizing. Okay. And people say, how much do I need to put down? Well, if you never did a soil test, generally it's about 1 pound per 1,000 square feet. See, that's 1,000 square feet. If you know that, you know how much seed to put down, you know how much straw to put down. So why do I say 1/2 pound if Fescue could really go best in 1 pound? You want to do a split application. You don't want to put 1 pound all at once, because a lot of that nitrogen, high nitrogen fertilizer, is in periods of heavy rain is going to get pushed down below the root zone and get into the water table. We don't want that. If it moves up into the soil on hot days, it's going to volatilize. It's going to, and you're going to lose a lot of that. You'd be lucky to get about a third of that fertilizer for the plants. So, and again, fertilizer for a cool season lawn, cool season months, March and beginning of April, April 15th stop. You can wait to the fall and hit fertilizer again, September, October. Okay, next slide. Okay, if Bermuda grass, totally different. Again, when you see the months here, May, June, July, this is the hottest months. You're not going to be fertilizing fescue during those months. And again, go with a split application, just 1/2 pound of nitrogen. Okay, next slide. Okay, aerating. This is really critical. If you have a lawn, all lawns will experience severe compaction from foot traffic, from mowing. As trees get bigger, the roots actually help compact the soil too. If you aerate, you're going to get a core aerator. You're going to take a plug of soil out. And you can see on the picture on the right, this looks like a little burrow right there. That's going to allow more oxygen to get in, more root growth, more water to penetrate. And if you have a lawn that needs severe overseeding, core aerate first. You drop the seed down into the soil, make soil contact. You get a lot better germination. Also, if you need to fertilize, it's best to do that too, core aerate too. Okay, and you can rent these too or hire somebody to do this. So, aerating the lawn, cool season versus warm season. Again, early in the year, March and April for our cool season lawns. And then warm season lawns, you can do May and June. And this is totally different months again. So we got 2 different species of lawn grasses here. Okay, next slide. Mowing the lawn. Okay, we talked about this. Mow the lawn high, 3 to 4 inches. Best lawn I've ever seen that was about weed free, had the healthiest root system was a lawn that was cut at 4 inches, and keep a sharp mower blade. If you have a dull mower blade, what you're going to do, you're not going to cut this, cut the blades, you're going to rip it. And what that will do causes a browning effect where you get severe moisture loss from blades that are torn. So there's a slow healing process. This would be the same damage in a windstorm that a tree gets with limbs break. They don't heal well when they're broken and torn. Grass blades don't heal very well with a dull mower blade. Okay, next slide. Weed types, just a couple of things on weeds. There's a lot of different type weeds out there, and what do? They compete for space, growing space, not just for vegetative growth, for root growth. They compete. Basically, it's real serious when they have to compete for water use. Particularly, you have a lawn that requires and all lawns will require water except for Bermuda. You don't want to grow the weeds and feed them. Weeds actually will harbor and attract particular insects that feed on those, and those insects actually can vector hundreds of different diseases back to your lawn, to your vegetables, to your shrubs, and your trees. So it's a big issue with weeds, not just because they're unsightly looking, but they can harbor diseases actually that hardly affect the weeds. So they are a vector source. Okay, next slide. Just to separate the life cycles, winter annuals germinate, got to back up the season in late summer to early fall. So that's the reason for this is, I'm showing the slide, is that's when you should put down your pre-emergent. You want to interfere with weeds that germinate. So in the summer, generally you'll get summer annuals that germinate in the spring. So you always have to back up a season. That's when you apply a second application if you're going to use a pre-emergent. So if you want to be successful at controlling lawn weeds, minimum of 2 applications. And always follow the label because there's issues with herbicides and fertilizers getting into groundwater. Now, if you're going to control a perennial weed, particularly one that is maybe woody or something like that, a perennial is just a plant that lives at least 2 years. It's best to treat those in the fall, because then there's a downward movement of nutrients going down into the roots. And if you use any type of systemic herbicide, it will move down into the root tips and kill the perennial weed during that time. The rest of the year is an upward movement of nutrients, and the systemic herbicides actually chemical. They bind onto the carbohydrates so that their movement is dependent on the season, time of year the plant's growing. Okay, I think we're about done here. Herbicide, okay. You have a pre-emergent, again, we said that, inhibiting germination of the growth of seedlings. Post-emergent, you want to interfere, destroy some type of leaf, stem, or root tissue. Next slide. Okay, the things in green are important. A pre-emergent is only effective if it's applied before the seeds germinate. Once the root system is established even on a weed, pre-emergent has no impact whatsoever. The biggest failure with it's not just in timing, it is you have the application of water. It takes at least a ½ inch more of irrigation or a good rainfall. You don't want a rainfall period of 1.5 inches, 2 inches coming up and put down a pre-emergent, because it's going to dilute it and won't be effective at all. So it's best to apply it and make sure that you apply at least a ½ inch of irrigation or it's ineffective. Next slide. Okay, winter annuals should begin treated in the fall. We have to jump back 1 season. And those are the approximate dates. I mean, you've got a month and a half, September to October. That's when these winter annual seeds are really germinating. Now in the summer, you got to jump back to the spring to put down the second application pre-emergent. That's generally February to March, but you know those months, those are winter months in Tennessee. But that's when the summer annuals start to germinate. You won't see any growth on them then. And again, perennials to be treated in the fall. Okay, next slide. And okay, here we go. Last 2 slides. These are just resources. When you get this PowerPoint, you can get these and look up. This is a nice publication we have called Lawn Care, Selecting, Maintaining, Establishing the Fescues. And then the University of Tennessee Soil Lab and Soil Plant Pest Center. That's when you open up these, it's a remarkable links to these sites. And this one is a good one on lawn disease and insect control out of the book we call our Red Book. And then I threw this in, and this is really good. People that like vegetable gardens. Vegetable gardens are an integral part of landscapes now, and particularly when people are home now. And so this is a good list of conventional organic products for vegetable gardens. So I think we're done here. I talked fast. I had a lot of stuff here. So I guess Michael and I might answer some questions now.
Yeah.
Yeah, David, I just want to go back to the chat box question we had from Heidi earlier about her white clover or her clover. And Heidi, if you're still on, what I would say is most of the clovers that we see in the lawns is the common type clover or Dutch type clover that's usually pretty short. If you're buying seeds, be careful because a lot of those are going to be more related for pastures. And those are the giant ladino type clovers. And if you're putting those in the lawn, they may not be very successful because they're not going to bloom out as short because they're, like I said, geared towards pasture growth for cattle or hay, where they're going to get quite a bit of height to them. And those are typically what you're going to see, at the supply stores. So just be careful if you're purposely seeding clover in your yard, because most folks are trying to kill it actually. But if you're going to seed it in your lawn, be sure you got the small common type like a Dutch clover.
Yeah, bees do love it. It's a great nectar source of bees. And clover grows below the height of the grass, so it's a perennial. It can be a tough plant to try to get rid of. So you might as well just like it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of, this is Dora. That's kind of what I was curious about. I've done 1 acre of my 3 and little blue stem and large blue stem just to, have wildlife habitat.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other stuff. But instead of trying to do fescue and all that jazz, it's like, are there some other things, since they don't really work in this area, that people can be doing and maybe accepting that there's more of a patchiness to your ground cover? The strawberries or other things, because we're in this vicious cycle where some people are trying to maintain maybe the perfect lawn. And so there's just a lot of effort.
Yeah, that perfect lawn fescue is just a double-edged sword. Here we go. It's a really non-native plant that we spend a lot of money on to buy seed, and we fertilize it and we aerate. We do all this time maintenance stuff just so we can cut it.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I was just like, what else can we do instead?
So get it to
Your
grow
neighbors
fast.
just don't get mad at you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you still mow it, or
Yeah, we fertilize it to grow fast so we can cut it again. Now, let me tell you one point on about fertilizers as pollutants. Phosphorus really ties up vines in the soil and doesn't move very well. But phosphorus in your grass blades, and I see this happen all the time, and it just gets to me. A lot of lawn care people that have no training whatsoever just do maintenance and mowing. You know what they'll do? They'll blow all those grass clippings out in the street. And you know what happens to them? They contain high levels of phosphorus and nitrogen, and they get into the storm drains. Then they break down, and that's how phosphorus gets released into our waterways, into our ground table and streams and ponds. And I think I don't know if there actually regulations against that there, and you're not supposed to, Metro Water Services, your ditch in your yard, you really don't own that property. If you see where your property border is, generally it's not the ditch, even though we have to maintain the ditch. But you're not supposed to really put debris like that, because that's where everybody puts debris. So General Services can pick all that stuff up, but it always gets in the storm drains. So that's a weird thing about.
Hey, David, kind of along that topic, we had a question from one of our members earlier today. And so I'm from an agricultural background. So I kind of, I also kind of have the idea too that, when you put down a bunch of fertilizer on like an ag field or something, and you get a heavy rain a day later, 2 days later, you're going to see some runoff from that stuff. And, you're going to lose a lot of that phosphorus you put down. With the kind of intermittent showers that we get here in Tennessee, and your afternoon, 15-minute super heavy, rainstorm, do you have any recommendations about, when to fertilize? I know we kind of talked about season, but as far as, like day to day, week to week, do you try to look at the weather, a week out and try to pick a day that's, doesn't look like it's going to rain for the next few days, or, do you have any advice for
That's
that
what I
kind of
do.
situation?
I don't. You might chime on this too, but I'm a big weather nerd now. I tell you, I watch the weather all the time, and that's why I'm in kind of favor of some split applications. Don't put the full recommended amount down to. And a lot of people think, I'm going to get a good inch of rain.
Yeah.
And if the soil has been really dry for a long period of time, it can actually be hydrophobic.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
repel
exactly.
water, and then all you're going to do is get runoff.
Yep.
You want the soil, any type of application, particular fertilizer, you want it to already have a level of moisture in it. You don't want it to be dry, because in a heavy deluge, 3/4 of an inch or more, you're going to spend for runoff. And the biggest pollutant in our streams is sediment.
Oh yeah.
It's not all these pesticides. So then pesticides, phosphorus will readily attach in the soil. Phosphorus can move off as runoff, but it needs a little bit of help. But in the spring, we get almost too much rain. Rain is hard to predict. Weather people got it made. They'd be wrong half the time. They still get paid for it. If I gave them out wrong advice, they'd have fired me a long time ago. I must be giving out good advice. I don't know.
And David, just to add to your split application, we have several publications that David referenced that are online. One really good one is on lawn fertilization and management of home lawns, and it talks about several different things, but it mentions the split application of fertilizer. So if you are planning to fertilize your lawn, you don't want to do it all at once, because you have to think now the P and the K, they're going to sit there, but the nitrogen especially, it's only there for a limited time. And so the grass can't use it all at once. So if you will feed it, September, October, November, even do multiple split applications and put enough out there that it's going to use half pound 3 different times in the fall. It's sort of like feeding your pet. If you buy a 25-pound bag of dog food, you don't throw the whole bag of dog food out there at one time. You feed them a little bit every day. Grass is the same way when it comes to nitrogen. And fertilizers are expensive. They're not cheap anymore. And so you don't want to over fertilize for multiple reasons, but one of them is just the cost associated with it. And plus, your nitrogen is not utilized if you put it all out there at once, no matter what time of the year it is. So you want to put it out there where it can take it up and use it. And like I said, split applications and even multiple split applications. And we've got some publications that talk about that to sort of walk you through it if you want to do it.
Do watch the weather. The weather is critical.
Forbes Walker was also presenting 2 years ago at one of the state water conferences about soil test results and how much phosphorus was in, especially the soil tests that have been coming in from this area because of the high phosphatic soils. And so do people even need to use a fertilizer with any phosphorus in it at all? If they're just, obviously that's what the soil test helps you with. And then you check off what you want to, that's why you get a soil test, right? I want fescue lawn, or I really don't. But does anybody even need to use phosphorus anyway? I guess, or for just your generic?
Probably most of the people down in the area you live in, Tennessee soils are high in phosphorus and generally high in potassium too.
Oh, okay.
There is more phosphorus in the soil. If you have medium to high to very high, when you get the soil test back and you see maybe the letter V, that's just very high. You got more, you'll never need in your lifetime.
That's what mine is.
Apply any phosphorus.
Yeah, my pH is always 5.5, and I got V for phosphorus. So
yeah, so as phosphorus gets tied up in the soil, so you'll have a large amounts, but it's not readily available.
Okay.
And that's where the soil life, the microorganisms, come into play. Actually, it's amazing. Bacteria that live around a small area called the rhizosphere,
right,
which plants through photosynthesis, most of that energy goes into making carbohydrates and other products, and the plant feeds the soil. exudates, they give back to the soil to feed the microorganisms. So there's a lot we didn't understand many years ago about this interaction between, that's why I say soil is a living component too. The bacteria and especially woody plants, mycorrhizae, fungi, plants give back. It's very unusual. They don't just take away from the soil, they give back. Carbohydrates, which are sugars, and proteins, which are necessary for soil life to prosper. And it's those little microorganisms that make nutrients available. Now, your soil pH has to be in a critical range too for these soil microorganisms, but it's interesting how plants give back. You don't ask them to, they've always done it. So you got to have that living component besides the roots.
Right.
So, yeah, but there's plenty of phosphorus generally.
Hey, David, I'm gonna maybe hijack this for a second because I've got more of a scientific question to ask you. But so mycorrhizae, I guess, I don't know if people know that term, but that's basically a fungus that lives in the soil that has a symbiotic relationship with a lot of different plants that they kind of like help each other and transfer nutrients, and they can help pull nutrients out of the soil and et cetera. Is seeding mycorrhizae or actually like inoculating a lawn or soil with mycorrhizae? Have you seen that in practice? Because I know I've theoretically talked about doing that with some plants, but does that actually happen? Do people do that?
Well, there's different species of mycorrhizae.
Sure.
They're mainly prolific with woody plants in a forest ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason trees do so well with woody plants as opposed to lawns. We want 50% of the biomass to be bacteria because they're going to convert nutrients in a usable form for plants. But it's now kind of a practice, and I think it's kind of like an add-on sale thing for a lot of companies. Okay. And they may not know the science behind it, but it's like selling mulch, you
Sure.
know. I said, if you don't see this in nature, do you ever see trees just 4 feet of leaves around them? No, you don't. But, you know, if you sell a lot of products, and the consumer, homeowners don't know this, they're not going to read a book on, even though they should, about microbes in the soil. There's some really good reading books about soil life that are actually fun to read. And but I think the lawn care companies, they just figured out more ways to make money. Inoculating now the soil mycorrhizae for regrowth on grass, that's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
But now, David, on clover seeds, I think especially if we're talking pastures, it's not uncommon to inoculate clover seeds.
Okay. Yeah.
On clover. Fescue, no, but clover. It's actually recommended. Yep.
That's interesting. Okay, thanks.
We're about 10 minutes over, so if we can wrap this up. I know we've lost few people that need to go. We will send out some information on how to reach you two. But if there's any last minute questions from anyone.
So someone can send a question to my email if they would like to. I accept emails any 24/7, but not phone calls. Even though our phone rings through the middle of the night, I know it's probably some politician calling or something for a vote. But,
yeah, everyone who's on here will get an email from me again with a little survey, and if they can complete that, and I'll include both of your email addresses with that, as well as the PowerPoint. And we will be putting this video on YouTube, so we'll all be famous.
Excellent.
Well, infamous. I'm more infamous than famous, I believe.
I'm wanted in 5 states, so yeah.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate it.
For inviting us. It's
been great. Thank you.
It's a fun group.
So this was really informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before the program started, I was thoroughly entertained just with the interaction of people reading everybody. I thought, well, let's just go this route. We don't need a program. I was thoroughly entertained.
Yeah, we'll just chat for an hour. That's fine.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Michael. And
Best to everyone.
Thank you,
Yes.
David.
See you
Thank
soon.
you, Jane.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Thank you
bye-bye.
both. Take care. Have a
Bye.
great night.
Bye.